Welcome. Happy Friday, wherever you are in the world. Michael Davis here of Speaking CPR with our 3 questions to better business. And I've been looking forward to this conversation today because it's a topic that we can't get enough of. It's all about humor and how to make your workplace more human with humor. With me is a gentleman that I have known for a couple of years now. We're in the same coaching group, Mr. David Horning. David is a comedian, and he's also now an advisor to businesses on how to make their companies more productive. David, good to have you with us.
Hey, it is good to be here. I'm happy. I sold my soul to do this. Let's go.
Well, you sold to the right guy. So give
Hey,
us just a real quick background on you and how you got to this position in life.
Sure. I've always loved making people laugh, and it was in the midst of a pretty big personal tragedy where I realized that that is a skill that can be used even in the darkest of times for people. Laughter provides a release valve, and many times, and I hear this not as much because I'm surrounding myself with much more open-minded people, but the idea that, oh, there's a certain time and place to laugh. Okay, maybe, but there's a certain time and place to laugh, a certain time and way. And so if you can channel humor in a way that relieves tension in the right moment, that is kind of what's driven my mission, is how can I teach people to do that? So I've been doing comedy since 2012, stand-up more specifically starting in 2018, and I produce a bunch of local shows here in Cleveland because if I can't, make everybody laugh constantly, I want to put other people in a position to do the same thing too.
Well, there you go. And aside from the workplace, you're a lifelong Cleveland area, correct?
I am. Oh, well, I lived in New York City for a couple of years. I did
Okay.
sketch and improv comedy out there, which is where I got my improv background.
I have a buddy who's from Cleveland, and we commiserate about the NFL. And
Hey,
we
you at least got a Super Bowl under your belt.
we got there. We gotten there 3 times as Bengal fans. But I was watching some clips from 1986 and 87 when Cleveland was this close to getting to the Super Bowl and didn't make it. So Phil and I have this common belief that the sports gods hate Ohio NFL fans.
Yeah,
They like to tease us.
It's unfair that Columbus has the best football team, or the most successful, the most decorated football team in the state.
It absolutely is, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to channel my
Yeah,
1950s era grandpa and start with, before we get into our 3 official questions. Look, David, we're talking about work here. There's no humor that it belongs in work. How can you say that? All right, that's 1950s thinking. So is that a pervasive thought you still have to deal with?
Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's conditioned into us. That's the old industrial style of working is, here's a quota, and you got to meet this quota. And if you're not meeting that quota, well, then you're out of here. And that stops the room for creativity. It just limits us to, let's do this routine thing, clock in, do the job, clock out, do it all again the next day. And that takes our humanity out of it. Now that we are in an information age, that way of thinking should be extinct. However, there are many leaders who still subscribe to that belief because it's what they know through no fault of their own.
True. It's what they grew up on.
Right.
Do you think, and I know this term is overused by now, but the Great Resignation, is this a sign that people have had it with that mindset?
Absolutely. This has been inevitable since the dawn of the internet. Since before that, though, really.
Yeah.
Since, we're escaping what makes us human by fitting ourselves into these cubicles, into this industrial way of thinking. And so we were always headed toward a more human, or on a more human trajectory. And humor kind of unlocks that. It allows us to be our most human. And so now there needs to be a time and place in the workplace to laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it a coincidence that the first 3 letters of humor and human are the same?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think there's a reason.
Absolutely. Now, your answer may have answered the first official question here, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. And that is, what is the biggest current challenge you're seeing to bringing humor into the workplace?
This is such a loaded question, Michael.
It is, absolutely. I ask loaded questions.
We could spend an entire week on this. I mean, really, it boils down to three things. It boils down to the conditioning that we've never done it that way before. And that is built into the second thing, which is fear. The devil, and all that. It's challenging to kind of escape what we know because there's a sense of uncertainty there. So that creates a sense of fear. And built into that, especially today, is this myth of cancel culture. But really, when it comes to humor in the workplace, people forget that the value of using humor effectively comes with reading the room. It comes with knowing your audience, and it comes with the intent of humor, which is to uplift. So if you're doing those three things, if you're building a culture centered around those things, there's no need to fear cancel culture. And the third thing that stops people is the misperception of what humor actually is. When people think of humor, they think of jokes, they think of comedy.
Right.
Those are two byproducts of humor, but humor is really just connecting unlike things or similar things in new ways. And so it's really, if you want to really simplify that definition, it's creative problem solving. And when it's defined that way, people will approach it a little bit differently than if I just had this conversation with a client where I put together an agenda for a half day session, and they were like, we don't really feel comfortable going into using humor as a skill. Can we dive a little bit more into problem solving? And I'm like, well, that's the same thing. So I literally just replaced the word humor entirely in the agenda with problem solving and creativity and building connection and building trust. And I'm not going to change the present or the agenda for the day at all, but
right.
just changing the semantics. So it's that misperception of what the word really is. So that's really what stops people from leaning into it.
So it's a misperception of humor. And you mentioned a vital skill I'd like to dig deep on for a moment, and that is, how do you effectively read a room?
Curiosity first. Lead with curiosity always. If you're not sure who's in the room, ask questions. That's a skill that it's learned, but man, if you can master that skill and continually master that skill and get better at asking interesting questions that get people to answer open-ended, you change the temperature of the conversation. I mean, it changes the trajectory of the conversation. It changes the way that you collaborate with one another. So leading with questions first and being genuinely curious with where people are coming from, I think that is the mindset of a comedian, but also someone who's a problem solver at the same time.
Okay. Now, the speaker trainer in me wants to come behind that and add, it's critical that you know your topic so well and your presentation. Notice the word memorization wasn't in there, but you know it so well. You know the flow that you can go back to the presentation, go ask questions, read the room, get the temperature, come back, go to the presentation. That's a vital skill.
Absolutely. And it makes the audience, whether it's a room full of people or you're having a one-on-one conversation or you're leading a team meeting, it makes them feel like they have a say in what you're doing, even though you're dictating the terms of the exchange. It totally changes that.
And not once yet have you and I talked about the vital nature of slides and PowerPoint in this conversation.
120 slides. Make sure there's so many bullet points that people's heads are spinning. 50 pages of notes. I'm making your skin crawl with that.
Not really, because there occasionally is a use for those, and you can use them to generate humor. You can use questions and polls to generate humor. But yeah, to your point, the bullet points, I find it fascinating that we're still talking about this topic in the year 2022, when for the last 2 decades at least, there have been people out there preaching, stop using slides and stop using bullet points. Well, they're still using them. So we're going to keep pounding this table until people get the message.
Right. It's much more nuanced than either do it or don't,
Yeah. There are ways to use it, but don't use it the way we have been.
Exactly.
All right. Now you have a quote that I love, but I have to follow it up with a one-word question. Here's your quote. Leaders need to think more like comedians. What? What does that mean, David?
I know that the eyebrows go up instantly whenever I say, "Here's the secret: think like a comedian." Comedians are really a kind of a cult of personality. What makes somebody that can say something so controversial so likable? And there's so many different ways that they do that. And I already touched on one, leading with curiosity instead of judgment. What a comedian does when we write punchlines to a joke, it's very easy to just settle on the first punchline, the obvious thing. But what a comedian will do will unpeel that onion a little bit more and think, well, why did I come to that punchline? What's deeper? What's the next step? And continually ask questions until they find a punchline that's much more rewarding and much more builds a better connection with the audience. The same thing is true in leadership. When you make a decision as a leader, usually, the first idea, it's right there. It's the low hanging fruit. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
But approaching that first idea that comes to mind with curiosity and really diving into what that could uncover, it's the same skill that a comedian uses, but just using it in a totally different setting. And so it starts with that. A comedian has no fear to challenge the status quo. More leaders need to have that mentality. Even if things are going well, even if a joke is going well, I'm still tweaking it. Well, what if I said it a little bit differently? What if I switch the setup and the punchline? What if I were to write a joke arguing the opposite point? Would that make my initial point stronger? So there's a million different ways that you can challenge where you are, challenge your own perceptions, and that's our job as a comic, is to really challenge what's going on out here and what's going on in here. And
Yeah, it's the misperception that it's just all about getting laughs. And I know you and I have our mutual buddies in the coaching group. Jeff Rogers, who's an improv master, Ray Engen is a comedian, Bill Stanton is a humorous speaker, Karen Buxman, all these folks help me understand comedy even deeper level. All of you have, and my main mentor in speaking was originally a comedian. And I learned so much about what comedy isn't. And I've even heard, and I'm paraphrasing this, that comedians are modern day philosophers who see society looking down the road. They see what's coming. And I thought that was a pretty brilliant observation because the best ones do.
it's just being in tune with human nature, just kind of being able to read the writing on the wall and kind of lean into that and poke fun at where we are to kind of guide in another direction. Now, the thing with the comedian is we're really bad at coming up with like actionable ideas. And that's where, think like a comedian, sure, but then act like a leader. And that's the gap that I want to bridge with what I do, with how I help managers.
Well, it's funny you say that because I work with speakers on their presentations and they ask about humor. And I say it's not about jokes because if the comedian's joke falls flat, they're going to be out of a career soon. If the speaker's joke falls flat, you just made a brilliant, serious observation.
Yeah.
And at the end of that is an actionable item. By the way, Kit Kat is joining us from Manila. She heard that David Horning was going to be on, and she's in the Philippines watching you right now, David.
Hey, that's where my biggest audience is, believe it or not.
That's right.
One person. Let's go.
Let's do it. All right. So let's consider the state of the world today when it comes to employees and people working for companies. People want more pay. They want better benefits. They are being threatened with technological obsolescence, and we are dealing with societal polarization. Humor? Really, David, with all this going on?
I
What are your
know.
thoughts on that?
I know. I'm a madman. How is this?
You're insane.
How could this possibly be the solution to all of these problems? When you turn on the news, it's doom and gloom. And yeah, well, you know what humor does? What it really does is it disrupts a pattern of thinking. And that's why we laugh. When we laugh, it's kind of our brain's way of saying, I've never looked at it that way before. And neurological scans have shown that when we here's the nerdy science part of using humor.
Yeah,
When
sure.
we laugh, it's the same. When we get a joke, it's the same part of our brain as when we solve a problem lights up. And so problem solving and humor are two sides of the same coin. So if we've been thinking one way, the same way over and over again, and then something interferes all of a sudden, we're usually resistant to it. But what humor does, when we laugh, we become a little bit more accepting without even realizing it. And so opening ourselves up, disrupting the pattern and laughing opens us up to new possibilities. So if we're stuck in the same way of thinking, or, the very limiting way of looking at things is through an either or perspective. It has to be one way or the other. And we kind of talked about this with using slides. Should we or shouldn't we? No, the question is how. How can you? Yeah. And that's the question that humor is continually asking, and we'll never stop asking. How can we do this? And so it introduces new possibilities by interrupting that pattern. So that's really that's what I want people to do, is to interrupt their pattern and consider new possibilities through curiosity, being willing to challenge preconceived notions, being willing to challenge, deeply held beliefs, and think, well, what if we could do this better, versus this is the way. And that's a little Mandalorian reference.
I was going to say, you're a Mandalorian, aren't you?
Yeah, deep down, that came out of nowhere. I'm not sure. It just jetpacked its way out of my brain.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Well, one of the earliest messages that I got in speaking was, in order to open your audience up to your idea, get them laughing first, then hit them with your best stuff. I don't remember what speaker that was. He was a Hall of Fame speaker, but I thought that was brilliant. And it occurs to me, David, that so often we compartmentalize topics. Innovation's over here, creativity's over here, humor's over here, no, they're all in the same soup. And if we get good at one, it will impact the others. And I can see how that would build a team up and improve them so much. I talk with speakers all the time about using storytelling to build trust. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think humor is probably a better way to build trust. And the combination of the two is unbeatable.
Sure. If you tell a story and you can get them in your shoes, and you can kind of subvert the expectation of the story. Many of my stories are about how I've fallen on my face. And when you see a speaker, especially a keynote speaker, many of their stories are, I climbed Mount Everest. I got into, I helped my team win the Super Bowl. All of these unrelatable stories, but everybody's fallen on their face. Maybe not the ways that I have. I've bombed in ways where I wake up in cold sweats days later, still thinking about the crickets and blank stares. Not anymore. Now it's about, everybody can relate to that bomb, that life bomb, whether they've been on stage or in a conversation, or sent an email to Linda when it was to a Linda, dear Linda, when it was meant for Janet. And that, we've got to kind of lean into those things. And so the stories that I share are the stories where I do fall on my face, where I do get fired, where I do mess up. And then it comes together with a message at the end. Like, I've learned from this because I was able to laugh about it. When things go bad, we initially want to resist it. And that's, you stop right there. That's it. There's no growth. So
yeah,
I flip that on its head with, and here's how I've learned from it. Here's how I'm better because of it.
Yeah, I think the best comedians, the best humorists, best speakers avoid what a lot of people do, and that is, I'm going to come out here on stage, and I'm here, and you're down here, and I'm going to talk down to you and tell you how it is. The best bring it down here. It's like, oh, not only am I on your level, I'm a little below, because listen to what I just did. It was really stupid, right? And immediately, boom, you're one of us.
Sure.
And it ties into the 6 common emotions: happiness, anger, sadness, surprise, disgust, or fear. And you can do all of that through humor.
Oh, yeah.
And, one of our attendees, Drexel, says, when we laugh, we learn better. Absolutely. We're opened up to hearing the message, because that laughter helps wipe clean a lot of that those preconceived notions we have walking in.
Yep. It's the disruptor.
Yes. And Bill, I'm going to promote you. Bill Lampton is here with us. Hi, Bill.
Hi. I didn't know about your program today, but my puppy, Georgia, she was browsing the internet, and she saw that you were on, and she said, hey, Bill, that'd be a good thing for us to watch together.
Hey, Bill, my bosses aren't here with me. They're upstairs sleeping because it's cold where we are, and they have their own heated blankets and beds. I don't.
God bless
they
them.
do. And so, yeah, that's what your dog saw. And good to have you.
Your dog is
questions?
Georgia?
Oh, I have been acquainted with Michael's work for a few months now. We've exchanged some comments on LinkedIn, and I'm very delighted to be a viewer, and you kindly invited me to be a guest, David. Nice to get acquainted with you as well. I want to mention two quick incidents, and I can make them very quick, but in my management career before I became a consultant, I was in an office where I had worked for probably 3 months. And the manager came to me one day and he said, something in this office has to stop. And I said, what is that? And he said, these people are laughing. I found some of them laughing. And he said, and you know, Bill, that when they are laughing, they're not working. Well, I'll have to tell both of you, I sent out a lot of resumes the next day.
That's your red flag right there.
That was not a fit for me. And then the other one I can tell you quickly. Also in my management career, there were about 25 of us sitting around a table. It was the day when we presented our department's budget needs. The CEO would decide who gets what amount of money they're asking for and who doesn't. And of course, it was a very tense situation, but the CEO did a great thing. When he walked into the room, he didn't say anything. He just walked around and placed a crying towel on each person's where they were sitting. Everybody had a crying towel. And that certainly we still were nervous and we were determined, but that certainly broke the ice in a wonderful way.
Yeah, the nonverbals there. That's really funny.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, Bill. And David, you'll notice he's a dog lover and he has 3 letters after his name. He's a lot smarter than us.
Oh, yeah.
I had to
got
bring
3
him on.
letters after your name, Michael.
Well, I do, but it's not a food.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on with Georgia.
Well, thank you. And Georgia says she's enjoying it and learning from it. Good to be with both of you today. Thank you.
All right. I can tell Georgia's got a great sense of humor. Yeah, my boss just woke up from his nap down there. So
yeah. So we all know who's in charge of our lives. Thanks, Bill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, David, I appreciate your time today. We could go on a lot, I know, and we'll have you back on. But I do want to make you aware that you are about to receive a special award that only 2 other people on the planet have gotten. Okay. And that's only because I just thought of it 2 guests ago. But highly deserving of this. You're very accomplished. You've gotten a lot of awards, but you haven't until today had this one. It is called the Golden Shovel Award. This is presented to all my guests who have the skill of digging deep with their clients, their cohorts, their peers to find the gold. And you're a master at helping people dig out the humor in their lives to improve their working conditions, their personal and business lives. So my friend, you are going to receive this in a specially delivered email just to you.
I'm honored. I'm the third.
You are the third.
Does that mean, wait, so the first person you gave it to, they're the worst. The second was the best. I'm just waiting for my treasure chest.
Bronze, silver, and gold. Now,
Okay.
Actually, I was talking to my friend Ed Tate, one of my longtime friends and mentors, and I just had this idea because I'm all about people who are really masters at digging below the first answer, and you demonstrated that in our conversation today. Hey, you got to dig, but that's where the gold is. So all kidding aside, you are really good at that. I've seen you do it. I've seen you do it in some of our coaching calls and within our coaching groups. So it is great pleasure. Even though you were third, it was just a question of the calendar. You would have been first.
Hey, according to that old nursery rhyme, I'm happy to be number 3. So, I thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate you. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, they can reach you at
Oh, they can find me
is.
at watercoolercomedy.org. That's my email. You can follow me on all the social media. Twitter is where I try and bomb new jokes, and LinkedIn is where I share my insights that I've learned from those trying and bombing new jokes.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll be posting the replay of this later today. But again, watercoolercomedy.com and then David at watercoolercomedy.org.
It is both.org.
Yeah. Oh, it is both.org. Okay.
Yeah,
so
the
I'm glad I
.com
didn't
was
print
like
that.
$15,000. I said, you know what? I can
I'll
be
do
a
15.
.org.
15.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I asked for the domain, and he's $15,000, and I was like, man, that should come. That doesn't even come with the Golden Shovel Award. I can't.
You know what? If it came with that, you probably would have dropped the money right then.
Like this.
That's right. So, all right. Before we go, reminding everybody, if you'd like your insights into storytelling, you can take a deeper dive by getting a weekly 5-minute audio lesson with a transcription. It'll give you one idea on storytelling 1 week at a time, but within a year's time, you'll be at least 3 times more effective. I know, because that's what happened to me. If you would like to get your copy or get on the list for 52 Storytelling Insights, go to this address, infone, not iPhone, infone.co. Talk about a confusing email address, David. I love this tool. I wish they would come up with a slightly different email address, but it's infone.co/speakingcpr. That will take you to my virtual business card. Just go click on the 52 Storytelling Insights, and you can receive those on a weekly basis. Coming soon to a live stream near you, big question mark. My scheduled guest found out she can't be on. I'm not sure who it will be yet. In the speaking world, that's what we call creating curiosity, so that you'll lean forward and pay attention and stay tuned for the next week. Join me then. David Horney, you're awesome. I will continue to see you in our LinkedIn group where we support each other's posts. Keep bringing your brilliance to the world, and we will talk very soon, my friend.
Thank you. Find a way to make somebody's day today.
There you go. Make them laugh.
Yep.